Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Daily Scope. A mysterious crew is preparing to launch into space, and none of them are NASA astronauts. This week, a SpaceX rocket will carry 4 private individuals to the International Space Station. Not tourists, not billionaires, but trained astronauts backed by countries you've never seen in space before, including one who just left the Indian Air Force. Why is this launch happening now? Why are private companies, not governments, sending humans to space? And, most importantly, what does this mean for the future of space exploration? Because this isn't just a rocket launch. It's a major shift in who controls the final frontier. There's tension behind the scenes, politics, power struggles, and a hidden race to commercialize Earth's orbit. SpaceX is making history. Again. But what's really going on? You're about to find out. For most of the space age, going to orbit was a privilege reserved for elite astronauts chosen by government space agencies, NASA, Roscosmos, ESA, and a few others. The only way to reach the International Space Station was on a government-funded rocket, with years of military training and intense clearance. But now, things are changing fast. On June 11, 2025, SpaceX will launch the Axiom Mission 4, or AX-4, from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The rocket, a Falcon 9, the capsule, Crew Dragon C213, a spacecraft that has never flown before, and the crew, 4 astronauts, none of whom work for NASA. Meet Peggy Whitson, a retired NASA legend who now works for Axiom Space. She's already spent over 665 days in space, more than any other American. She's the commander. Beside her is Shubhanshu Shukla, a former Indian Air Force pilot. This mission marks a monumental moment for India, as Shukla becomes the first Indian citizen to travel to space aboard a commercial U.S. spacecraft. Not through ISRO, but via a private agreement. Then there's Sławosz Uznański, representing Poland, an engineer and scientist backed by the European Space Agency, but flying under the Axiom banner. And finally, Tibor Kapu from Hungary, another first. His flight is funded in part by Hungary's government and a coalition of private companies, signaling a new model of national presence in space. So, what's the big deal? This mission is being coordinated by Axiom Space, a private aerospace company based in Houston. Their goal? To build the world's first commercial space station by 2031. AX-4 is more than a flight. It is a rehearsal for an entirely new space economy. For 8 days aboard the ISS, these astronauts will conduct more than 30 experiments in biology, physics, and space medicine. But perhaps more importantly, they'll be testing protocols and equipment designed for Axiom AS future space station, which will eventually detach from the ISS and operate independently. This is the new space race, and it's not between countries, it's between companies. NASA knows this. That's why it's partnered with Axiom, SpaceX, and others to commercialize low Earth orbit. NASA AS plan is to hand off the operations of the ISS to private entities by the early 2030s, allowing the agency to focus its resources on deep space missions like the Moon and Mars. But here's where it gets interesting. Not everyone's happy about this shift. Critics warn that privatizing space could lead to unchecked monopolies in orbit. What happens when corporations, not countries, decide who gets access to space? Will science take a backseat to profit? And then there's the geopolitical angle. With China rapidly expanding its Tiangong space station and Russia planning to exit the ISS by 2028, the future of international cooperation in space is uncertain. In this context, Axiom's launch isn't just a milestone, it's a message that says, private industry is ready, and the future is here. Let's talk about the technology behind this mission. The Falcon 9 rocket that will lift AX-4 into orbit is the most reliable launch vehicle in the world, with over 300 successful flights. The Crew Dragon capsule is fully autonomous but can be manually controlled if needed. It has life support, emergency abort systems, and a robust thermal shield for re-entry. But here's what's even more fascinating: the training these astronauts received. Unlike traditional government training programs that last years, Axiom's preparation lasted just a few months. It focused on spacecraft systems, ISS procedures, emergency scenarios, and physical conditioning. They trained with NASA but under a commercial contract, a hybrid model that merges old-school expertise with new-age efficiency. And it's working. Axiom's previous missions, Ax-1 in 2022 and Ax-2 in 2023, proved that private astronauts can integrate with ISS operations without disrupting workflows. In fact, some even contributed to high-value research in microgravity environments. Still, there are real risks. Space is unforgiving. Launch failures, micrometeoroids, radiation, and re-entry dynamics all pose threats. But perhaps the biggest risk isn't physical. It's political. As more countries and companies crowd Earth's orbit, the legal frameworks that govern space are struggling to keep up. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty was written before we had smartphones, let alone private space stations. Who owns what in orbit? Who's responsible if something goes wrong? Right now, there are more questions than answers. And while SpaceX and Axiom are pushing boundaries, others are watching closely. Blue Origin, Northrop Grumman, and Sierra Space are all developing their own space habitats. Meanwhile, China is inviting international partners to collaborate on Tiangong, offering an alternative to the Western-led model. This makes Ax-4 more than just a mission. It's a test of trust, coordination, and vision. What kind of future are we building in space? A collaborative one? A corporate one? Or a fragmented one? And who gets to decide? This week's launch isn't just about 4 astronauts heading to the ISS. It's a moment in history, a sign that space is no longer reserved for superpowers. It's open to nations, companies, and even individuals with vision, training, and funding. But that raises big questions. Are we ready for a privatized space age? What will happen when multiple private space stations float above Earth, competing for customers and power? Will this spark a golden era of discovery or a chaotic space rush? Only time will tell. One thing's certain: SpaceX, Axiom, and this mission are just the beginning. If this video opened your eyes to what's really happening in orbit, make sure you hit like and subscribe to The Daily Scope, where space gets real. And now we ask you, would you trust a private company to take you to space? Let us know in the comments, because the future is already launching. Tools.